training session on identifying and avoiding scams. So we'll get right, into it. And what we'll discuss today as part of this training session is, first and foremost, what is a scam? Why do scams work? The different types of scams. As mentioned earlier, we just want to look at, some warning signs for some of these scams out there. And then basically building the best defenses we can have possible against these scams. So the more information we have, the more warning signs we're able to identify will definitely put us on a path to not fall victim to some of these unscrupulous, behaviors that, have definitely, impact a lot of people with, significant financial loss. So we'll start off with the question at hand: what is a scam, right? And when we think about it, here's kind of just a simple definition of a scam: is a trick, con artists playing on unsuspecting victims, right? The goal for every scam, nobody sets out these scams without without looking to make money and extort money, and in most instances where scams have succeeded, the victim's money is gone, and so is the scammer. So, they'll set the trap, hope you fall for the trap, and then once they've got your access to your financial resources, then at that point, they're gone in a flash. So the next thing we'll look at is typically what is determined as the pattern of fraud, right? So what you're going to see right now is just kind of a quick diagram illustration. So we think about this. So here's kind of the pattern that it goes in. You get the scam, you get the scammer, then you get the scam, the victim, and then of course the victim's assets. So this is typically kind of what the fraud cycle looks like, right? And of course, in most instances, most people find themselves, there's quite a few scammers out there, but there's also been a number of, a lot of more victims who have lost, as a result of not realizing that they were being scammed. Let's talk about a profile of a scammer, right? So when you kind of put it in perspective, there's, three things we want to definitely look at. But first and foremost, you're talking about someone who's a master of persuasion with a plausible story, or the ultimate salesperson with the most tempting offer, this offer that you just can't resist. They easily pinpoint a victim's vulnerabilities. They quickly gain your trust. And then, of course, at the end of the day, they show no mercy, right? So with every scammer that's out there, and I'm sure, as we're looking at it, this slide, sure some of you might be thinking like, yeah, there's probably people that or I've heard stories of people that have possibly fallen victim to scams or, avoided being a victim just by looking for some of the clear warning signs. But ultimately, it's all about that vulnerability, right? And scammers will always try to gain your trust first before they proceed with a plan. But at the end of the day, as mentioned in the previous slide, all they're looking to do is to extort money. So the question is, okay, how do scammers find you? How do they kind of, how are they able to get your information? How are they able to kind of send you, whether it's an email communication or pick up the phone and, basically place a call to you and kind of, try to set the trap? Well, first and foremost, they buy contact information, right? They are definitely very active, on the internet, in the online space, and especially social media sites. And in addition to that, a lot of them will find ways to infiltrate groups that you may belong to. In some instances, these could be people that have, gone door to door, right? You think about it in terms of, hey, who's the potential, who are the potential victims, where do they live, what are the patterns and all these other different things. But in addition to that, it's someone, when you think about the door to door, it's somebody showing up to your door with some sort of offer or, story to kind of get you to buy into it. And in most instances, once, if they feel like they've delivered a quality pitch, like, hey, here's what the situation is, here's how, we can help protect you, here's kind of the potential issue you could be falling into. A lot of times it's just kind of, being very, very vigilant and kind of not, giving away too much information. If somebody shows up to your door, in modern day society, a lot of people have Ring doorbells. They've got, gate, I mean, what you call like the security doors and everything else. It's almost like, don't let anybody, if you don't know who that person is, and if that person is trying to sell you on some information, if they feel like they're legitimate, it's always good just to kind of, go, I guess, go with your gut feeling. And essentially, if you haven't set up appointments, if you haven't done anything to, reach out to somebody to contact you to provide you that service, then just kind of know that, hey, there is a potential that this person could be, trying to set up a trap. So really, really important, this is kind of how they find you. And, like we spoke about last week, there's a lot of information out there. People put out a lot of information that they don't realize, is essentially what, scammers are looking for. So, social media sites, it's great to be able to connect with friends, family, and all the other advantages come with it. But it's also really important to understand that in most instances, you could be literally opening yourself up, to maybe, if you're part of a group, or maybe it's on, I'll just kind of use these for example, like maybe it's a Facebook group, or, something on Instagram, or all these other social media sites, if they've potentially, been able to access, scam one person, chances are they'll look for more people to kind of scam within those groups. So it's just really important to kind of know what you're putting out there, because at the end of the day, you're protecting your identity, and of course you're protecting yourself from any potential targets. So we think about it, scammers and victims, right? Scammers are highly skilled at their trade, right? They definitely appeal to emotions, sympathy, fear, loneliness. They don't take no for an answer, insist on secrecy. And at the end of the day, victims are vulnerable. I can just tell you from my experience, kind of being in the retail field and retail sales, there's a lot of people, that seniors that, that you've come into contact with that, they'll tell you like, hey, I was in the store, and, I came in because, I need to, purchase, some antivirus for a computer, whatever the case might be, because somebody got access to my information, I was online, didn't realize it. Then all of a sudden, that person reached out to them and basically tried to sell them on something. I mean, there's been instances, I've heard of, people that I know of where they've been placed calls have been placed, and they've been told that there's a family, a relative that's in distress, and hey, here's what you need to do. We need you to basically, get this money to them. And, here's what go to a 7-Eleven and purchase this. And then when you go, it's like all these different things that you have to do to kind of resolve the situation. Or, hey, somebody calls and tells you, there's a bill that's due, or, hey, there's legal action that's being taken, that's going to be taken against you. And the only way to resolve this is to go ahead and pay this off. And a lot of people that, might live on their own, a lot of people that, could find themselves, in that situation. In a lot of instances, you taking their word for it. And in that instance, there's always kind of, and we'll talk about this later on in the discussion, but there's, things about money, paying money up front and settling and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, one thing you always have to understand is that a scammer is going to look for a weak point. And if they feel that they can, infiltrate and kind of, definitely drive, emotions, and kind of, put that person to make it feel like, hey, this is something that's really going to happen, then at the end of the day, by the time they've got that person to, go along with their plan, there's definitely going to be losses. But ultimately, if of friends, family, for some of us, we have older parents. And this is some of the conversations that I have. Like, hey, if somebody calls you, if somebody says a bill's due, if somebody, reaches out and says, there's a service that's going to be disconnected, everything else, like, reach out to me first. Let's get some information before you go ahead and just start making all these payments, or, setting up or providing your routing number and your checking account number over the phone. Like, yeah, well, we can go ahead and settle this. So let's just go ahead and do this. Why don't you go ahead and give us a card number? You've got no proof of the bill. But at the end of the day, they'll come in and make it seem like, hey, this is that if you don't, act upon this, then you're going to find yourself in a situation. So the most important thing you can do is just also kind of, while we're here and we're going through the presentation, if you know of people that could potentially fall victim, to, some of these scammers, share the information that we're going to be going over with them today. And at the end of the day, as listed on the presentation, they don't take no for an answer, and they're going to be like, hey, you can trust me, we'll get this resolved for you, and kind of, definitely try to exploit, individuals. So when we think about it, we'll talk about the next, on the next slide, we'll talk about solving the scam problem, right? So the scam problem has one solution: knowing how to protect yourself, right? And to do that, you must recognize a scam when you see it, right? It's almost like if you're talking to somebody, if somebody's called your cell phone and they're providing information, or they've sent you an email, one of the latest things that I've actually found out, like this is something that I've noticed. Like, I mean, I have Netflix account, I have a Hulu account, I have, all these other streaming services, and I'll get these text messages to say that, hey, your account's about to be frozen, or there's a dispute or something crazy. And in most instances, when you look at it, even some of the email addresses, like they'll send you an email and it'll make it seem like it's coming from that actual provider. But sometimes just, if you do a deep dive, you'll notice that there's a few there's a few emails that have the names kind of been altered. They might still include, like a netflixinit.com or whatever the case might be. All these messages of like, hey, your account's about to be suspended. Go ahead and click on this link and settle the past due amount. And I'm like, okay, well, for somebody like myself, I'm like, okay, I know that I have my Netflix and my Hulu account on auto pay, and all the other streaming services. Typically I'll go in just as a quick thing, I'll pull up the account and be like, okay, the account's current. But it's just kind of noticing, recognizing these text messages and, these emails and these phone calls. It's like, just if it doesn't pass the smell test, then maybe it's just like taking somebody on else as a partner, maybe a family member, like, hey, what do you think about this? But the one thing I will say is, in most instances, don't click on the links that they provide. And in addition to that, if somebody's calling you, don't give out any personal information, because at that point, you don't know where your information could land. So the bottom line is, hey, the solution is knowing how to protect yourself, and most importantly, recognizing a scam when you see it. So let's talk about the varieties of scams that are out there. So let's, first and foremost, we'll talk about giveaways. So winning prize, hey, you just won the lottery, you got a free trip, right? Then you get those sweetheart, scams that come up in. Family imposters is something that has definitely been on the increase, where they literally will, depending on, like I mentioned, the information that you have on your social media sites, who's connected to you, kind of, who might be somebody that they figure out, it could be a brother, a sister, a sibling, whatever the case might be, a child. Then they'll kind of basically try to create, a scam, and you'll make it seem like it's, related to somebody on your family side. Government imposters. I mean, how many times do you get information that you owe the IRS money, or there's this agency that you owe money, and all these other things? So, it's definitely really kind of important to understand, like, first and foremost, like, one thing that I learned early on is that in most instances, the IRS is never going to call you. The IRS will send you documentation. If the IRS needs to get hold of you, they'll send you a letter in the mail. But all these people that call, pretending to be working for the federal government, and here's the situation you filed in, and hey, you didn't file your taxes, or there was an incorrect information on your taxes, and now there's a shortfall, and you need to settle this immediately. It's like, just be careful of, some of those, tech support as well. Hey, for people, like I was saying, they'll basically be using a personal computer at home. All of a sudden, maybe they click on a link, there's a virus that's, that kind of, goes in, that invades a computer. Now, the only way that they can actually release or kind of get their computer back in, back to, normal status or kind of working status, is to basically pay for a service to remove the virus, right? The link that you clicked on put the virus there. And now the same people that put the virus on your computer are saying, pay us to remove it. So it's very, very important to kind of, recognize, like, hey, that could be a potential scam. So the best thing you can do is just make sure that any of your devices that you're currently using, I mean, from your cell phone to your tablets to your computers, that you've got a reputable antivirus, built into that, because essentially you'd be surprised, if there's any, information that's sent to you. Most reputable antiviruses now will kind of do the scanning in the background. If there's a link that they've told you to click on to basically, go to a certain URL, if that's not a safe site, it'll flag it automatically. So just make sure that, you're doing everything you can to protect the electronic devices that you're using so you don't fall victim to a tech support scam. Phony charities. A lot of people out there, trying to, definitely solicit and, and get money. Hey, we've got this charity. I mean, we hear about it all in the news of how people have set up these GoFundMe pages that, they'll kind of, put out a story or kind of, make it seem like this is a worthwhile cause. This is a situation where they basically how to help somebody. When you really kind of think about it, in a lot of instances, some of them are just setting it up, using a front, and then essentially, getting money from people, whether it's through donations and stuff like that. So just be careful of those as well. Then, of course, these investments, everybody, is looking to, to earn, to kind of, earn wealth. I mean, earn additional wealth, investments, things related to, tips on, on related to like, the stock market or things that you can purchase, from an investment perspective. Hey, put down $500 and earn back $2,000 in 90, within the next 90 days. Definitely seems like a, deal that's too good to pass up. Just be careful of those as well. Last but not least, contractors. A lot of people kind of, coming in and posing as reputable contractors, offering to provide a service. Always money up front, right? It's always money up front. So, ultimately, these are the variety of scams that have been noted to be the most common, but they could be others because they're always looking for ways to kind of get people to fall victim. So just take the information in and just kind of be on the lookout for these, because at some point, as mentioned, hey, knowledge is power. So if you kind of get information or somebody reaches out to you and it's maybe related to one of these situations, just ask yourself, is this really legitimate or is this a potential scam? When we think about giveaway scams, we'll kind of go into this in more depth. So there's letter, email, or call that's thrilled to announce your winner, right? At that point, you've got to provide, an immediate response. So here you're a winner, right? You're getting good news, but now all of a sudden, there's a request for you to put money up front to release your winnings, to secure a reservation, or hey, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to send you this, your winnings. But what we need to do is we need to collect the taxes up front. Like at the end of the day, if it's legitimate, there shouldn't be any payments up front. Anybody that gets a winning lottery ticket, Powerball or Mega Millions, whatever the case might be, you win. At the end of the day, you figure your numbers out, you check your ticket, and then you go through the process, to kind of, get your winnings. But anybody that's reaching out to say, hey, congratulations, you were selected, and, here's what we have for you. And, in order for us to be able to release this to you, you've got to pay money up front. Anytime you've got to pay money up front for something that you won, like, I'm sure you guys can all agree, ladies can all agree that at that point, it just doesn't pass the smell test. When we think about these sweetheart scams, scammers create fake profiles on dating sites, apps, or social media sites. They work to build trust and profess love quickly. Often state they're outside the United States, they need money. And a lot of people have fallen victim to it. They have, and hey, at the end of the day, as like mentioned, it's all about, playing to people's emotions and finding that vulnerable spot and just exploiting it. There's a lot of people that, have gone, have fallen for these scams, these sweetheart scams. At the end of the day, before you know it, they're running off to a Western Union or to a MoneyGram, and they're sending this, person money outside. And yes, I'm looking forward to traveling and I want to come out there, but hey, I need to, if they're from a country that they don't, where they're required to get a visa, need money to get a visa, then before you know it, it's a plane ticket, before it's all these things. So, just, very, very important to be, beware of these sweetheart scams. Family imposter scams. urgent call from a scammer posing as a family member, a dear friend. Hey, the family member, the call is in serious trouble. Money required to, immediately to resolve the problem, and secrecy is paramount. I worked with a colleague who had a family member, and the family member, I mean, who lived in the United States but had family in Latin America, and actually got a call. And when they basically looked at it, said, "Hey, this person was involved in an accident, and this person is, their health is in, they're really in a critical condition. Hey, we need to get this money to them so we can pay for, for the surgery and everything else." And at that point, when you think about it, the fact that they were able to reach out to them, the fact that they knew their number, the fact that they knew who they were speaking to, in addition to that, the person that was supposedly involved, it's they like they're playing, like they're saying, like I mentioned earlier, playing to the emotions and the vulnerability, and come to find out, a lot of that information basically was obtained through a Facebook profile, right? So they went into the Facebook and was obtained through Facebook profiles, and they exploited it. So what ended up happening, that person just deleted, actually eventually got hold of another family member, was like, "Hey, and they were like, "We don't know what you're talking about. This person is in perfect health. There's no issues here." So, had they fallen victim to it, they would have definitely lost a lot of money, through the family imposter scams. Government imposter scams, hey, you didn't appear for, for jury duty, Social Security or Medicare benefits have been suspended. Hey, you owe back taxes. There's a problem with your return. They ask you to verify your information. Hey, to avoid, prosecution, arrest, or deportation, if you don't pay this within 24 hours, we're coming to get you. And then, of course, the payment must be a wire transfer, gift card, banker's checks. I mean, even now in modern day society, cryptocurrency. At the end of the day, like I've said, anything to do with the federal government, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, or IRS, they'll send you, if there's an issue, trust me, the IRS knows where to find you, and they'll send you a letter and reach out to you and provide you with the information that they need, or if there's anything that you need to respond to. So just kind of be on the lookout for these government imposter scams. Tech support scams, as I mentioned earlier, pop-up warning with fake error message and a number to call. You may receive a phone call from a scammer impersonating representatives from a technology company like Apple or Google. Hey, criminals trying to convince victims to remote access their computers to troubleshoot an issue. You've been locked out of your computer. You can't seem to gain access. They already have access. And the goal is to get your money and access your personal information. Anytime you give somebody remote access to your computer, then at that point, you have to understand you've just opened up, we've literally just opened up the floodgates, because then they can go in and get as much information, as much of your personal information, depending on what you've got on there, they could essentially hold you hostage. And if you're not paying the money, then, at the end of the day, they won't, release the information. They won't kind of, remove the virus, or, or any other potential, harm that they have already put in place. Charity scams, right? So the urgent plea for humanitarian help, pressure to make immediate donations, sometimes, quasi-legitimate, as, as mentioned. Sometimes, it's more than a sad story and a carefully chosen name. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people have set up scams with, hey, we're raising money for somebody who's, currently diagnosed with cancer or any other, life-threatening disease out there. We've got a picture of the person. Here's the story. Here's how you can get money to them. Essentially, no additional information is kind of, provided that you can go ahead and cross-reference. But as mentioned, it's all about playing to the emotions and looking for vulnerable spots that people may have, and just, going about, every way possible to exploit them. With these investment scams, investments described as risk-free. Hey, as I mentioned earlier, it's above average return. Invest $500, will give you $2,000 back. Immediate purchase, often required. Fees and commissions ignored or obscured. Anytime somebody comes to you with a too good to be true investment, and you've got to put money in, and there's no real way of you being able to tell, get the information you need. I mean, at the end of the day, there's so many legitimate and investment vehicles out there. There's so many different, companies that allow you to invest in, in various parts of the, within the market. but anybody that's calling you, anybody that's sending you an email, and all of a sudden now, maybe there's not a way for you to get an accurate paper trail, and you're putting money up front, or there's a purchase that you've got to make, just know that, hey, that could be a potential scam. Contractor scams, solicits a job pointing out an urgent problem, asking for, front payment, in cash, begins a job but claims it's more serious than initially thought of. And then, of course, they'll demand more money. Hey, you've got a gas leak, you've got this issue, you've got that issue. This is a code violation from the city. Hey, if you don't get this repaired in time, or if you don't, it's only going to, be additional money. Hey, we'll take cash, and we'll basically begin the work, but stop the work and never finish it. They're gone. So just be careful of these people that come and knock on your door, representing what you might think is, energy, energy company, whether it's SoCal Edison Gas. I mean, there's people that I've known that, people have showed up to their door, claiming to work for Spectrum, or some of these other, internet providers and stuff like that. And hey, we realize there's a problem, your connectivity, or there's work that's going to be done. And now all of a sudden, hey, we can basically go ahead and, stop the work for you to avoid any disruption in your service. We'll get this started straight away. Here's what you've got to pay us, as a down payment, and then of course, they go and never come back. So when we think about spotting scams, all scams, as mentioned, have warning signs. Immediate action required on your part, insistence on secrecy, money needed upfront, hard to track the payment methods, no paper trail. Remember, like I mentioned earlier, going to buy gift cards, going to transfer money, blank checks, or make the deposit into this account, or go to your bank account and here's the routing information and do a bank transfer, wire transfer, no paper trails. Like the paper trail, you think, you've got, documentation on your side, but once that money leaves your hands, and being able to track to see where the source is and who the recipient is definitely going to be difficult. So just be aware of all the warning signs that come, with spotting scams. With that being said, why are seniors targeted by scammers? So first and foremost, good question. Regular income. Most seniors tend to have a lifetime of assets. Maybe more trusting and willing to listen, right? Hey, call you, here's a situation, maybe this person lives on their own. We've got this is the issue you have, this is the service we have to provide, and here's what it's going to cost you to get this resolved. Maybe grateful, for the attention. Think about it, somebody that's, oh, wow, this person is coming in to fix a problem with my gas line, or maybe there's an issue, with the plumbing service, or the case might be. They'll just kind of look at it as like, oh, I'm being helped. So this person can't generally be, doing anything that's, unscrupulous, maybe eager to help when they can. And then of course, this is something that's really, really important. So if you know anybody that's, that's a senior that's living on their own, it's always, good to inform them, hey, if people are reaching out to repair or provide a service, and you haven't made any reports of any repairs or services needed, maybe just to contact a family member and reach out and kind of, get a second set of eyes on it, or kind of, maybe, hey, I'll take your phone number down. No worries. Yeah, I appreciate you reaching the call. Let me have my son call you back. Let me have my daughter call you back, or somebody else that they know can kind of, get more information, but, just preventing them from giving away too much, to these scammers. Contributing factors, fear of outliving assets, why are they targeting seniors? Less mentally alert, less financially astute, right? And less internet savvy, right? Those are going to be the contributing factors to why they're going to go after seniors, right? And at the end of the day, if somebody is not savvy, with technology, or maybe just kind of has the basic knowledge, or maybe, maybe it's a senior person that does have a smartphone, or maybe they do have a computer, but they don't have, they're not able to kind of be able to track and, do their own background check on their end, then essentially they could, fall victim to a scam. And then of course, scammers in a lot of ways, they feel like, oh, this person is kind of up in age, and they, they'll be able to kind of sell them on the story. And essentially, if it's somebody that's not, you know, able to kind of verify, or somebody that's, of age, that, that's a contributing factor for them to be targeted. So like I always say, for anybody that knows any seniors that are living on their own, hey, it's always good to just to kind of have a conversation with them and let them know, like, hey, not everyone that shows up and not everyone that reaches out or that's there to provide a service, could be legitimate in the work that they're going to do. So it's always good to have somebody else, just to reach out to in case those situations arise. So let's talk about barriers against scams, right? So we'll kind of look at this chart that we're going to kind of put up. So essentially, scammer, victim, and victim's assets, right? So what can we put in place to make sure that we are not falling victim to this, right? But it's essentially just making sure you're setting up your defenses and the information that's being required and the information that you're willing to provide, that you're not putting yourself, at risk. One thing that you can do, and one thing everybody can do on the call, and please share this information, with family, friends, and colleagues, is, hey, if you want to block those scammers, you can register with the National Do Not Call Registry at www.donotcall.gov to limit those phone calls, right? The less opportunities they have, because don't forget, if you think about it, they'll go basically buy information, contact information related to you, get a phone number, and then all of a sudden, it's a phone call, a text message, or an email to you. So you can actually register with the National Do Not Call Registry at the URL provided, and that can definitely put you on a path to, limit those phone calls. In addition to that, you can register with www.dmachoice.org to limit junk mail, right? So these are all really, really, these are all the tools and resources that are currently in place that are provided to basically limit those phone calls and to limit that junk mail that's coming in via email or anything else any other means that they may use to solicit. And as I mentioned earlier, antivirus software. I'm not gonna, say, which is a better antivirus to go with. Everyone, may have a preference for, one or the other, but just make sure that whatever antivirus that you currently have on mobile devices, on tablets, on computers, right, that they can detect malicious activity, that you constantly scan, you've constantly got your scanners in place to where if you're visiting a site or it's, a potential issue that comes up where somebody tries to extract information, spyware and malware from your, existing piece of technology, that the antivirus definitely acts as that barrier and prevents them from being able to get access. And last, but, second to last is, be very cautious about clicking on email links. Really, really important. And even if they send you a text message to resolve an account to say that your account's going to be suspended for lack of payment, I mean, as I mentioned, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, I can't tell you how many of them I've actually seen, come up. And in some instances, you also have to think about it, like, how would they know you have a Hulu account? How would they know you have a Netflix account? Well, in most instances, I think in a lot of ways, it's just people that are kind of fishing. They go on a fishing expedition, right? And they'll fish to see, hey, is there somebody going to basically bite on this? But ultimately, as mentioned, if you know that your accounts are in good standing and there's no delinquencies or anything where somebody may need to have a payment, in addition to that, if you look at it, for most of these accounts out there, that you may have, just having, the app downloaded on a mobile device, being able to log in and check, the account status, could also be a good thing, because at least that means, hey, if you get one of these suspicious emails with these email links, you're not gonna, fall prey to that. And as mentioned earlier, the internet, it's definitely a great tool. It's a great resource. Social media allows us to stay connected with friends, family, co-workers, and everybody else, within our community, within our city, state, and of course, across the country. But just be careful of what information you're putting out on social media, because there's somebody that's out there looking at that's looking at profiles, that's trying to connect the dots to see what they can do to maybe, have you maybe set you up for a family imposter scam, right? And then in addition to that, kind of using that information to, to help you to help you, fall prey to it. So just always kind of, keep your information, keep your personal information limited on any of your social media sites. A lot of people, don't, will require you to either kind of, I guess, I don't know what I'm kind of drawing a blank on the term because I don't really use social media a lot, but I guess, if somebody's going to send you a request to kind of be part of your, group, or kind of whether they're following you on Facebook or such, it's like your information's private, right? And the only way you could basically, they can gain access is if you actually know them, or maybe it's somebody that you're connected to. So just trying to keep those sites private, could be a good place to start as well. So building your scam defenses, right? So definitely be suspicious of any situation that requires you to send money up front, right? Assume that the insistence on secrecy is a ploy to deceive you, family, friends. Confirm all the stories, offers, or charities independently, right? And then, of course, choose the privacy settings on your social media accounts to limit somebody trying to come at you with, fake information and, basically setting a scam in place to extort money from you. If you're a scam victim, right? Because there's a lot of people that fall victim to scams. I haven't even looked up. I forgot to look up, kind of what the cost is, but I'm sure it's running into the billions of dollars here in the United States. If you do fall, if you are a scam victim, don't be embarrassed, afraid. Tell someone you trust. You can definitely report the scam, especially if it's something that's gone through like a personal banking, checking, or savings account. Hey, you have the ability to definitely contact the police and, and the respective federal agencies to kind of put in a report. Identity theft, or somebody trying to gain access to information, or you realize somebody is, using one of these scams, it's your right to file a report. A lot of times, there's a lot of people that, they'll kind of, encounter these situations, and they'll share that information across. If you're getting, if somebody's basically trying to say to you that you owe money, and if you don't pay the money, your services will be disrupted, then all you have to do is pick up the customer service number and call the company directly, right? And in a lot of instances, if anybody's reaching out to you and they're from a reputable company, and it's somebody that you're doing business with or is providing you a service, they'll have your information. All they'll ask you to do is, hey, verify the last 4 digits of your phone number. Can you verify, your current zip code or your street address, whatever the case might be, and then proceed to let you know what information is. But if you're being asked to give information, hey, can you tell us what your social security number is? Or hey, can you tell us what street address you like? If it's legitimate, they should have that information on file because they're providing you with the service. So it's always just kind of, important to kind of be aware of it. But ultimately, hey, if you feel that, there's a potential threat, let a family member know, let somebody know that you can trust. Essentially you could also, put a call into your bank to say, hey, I think I may have, been scammed, or somebody may have my information. Like mentioned in some of the previous sessions that we had spoken about, just in terms of like, when it comes to credit scores and everything else related to, a lot of people, have credit locks on the respective credit reports to kind of prevent people from running the information or kind of trying to open up accounts under their name. And by all means, last but not least, always contact the police, federal agencies, because who knows, depending on how far this could go, having a police report in place, could definitely help you, kind of recoup any potential losses that could be incurred. But ultimately, don't be afraid and don't be embarrassed to tell somebody, if you're a scam victim. Your bank can help you, right? So how can they do that? They can monitor your account for any unusual activity, essentially ask you why you were drawing large amounts of cash, right? Suggest giving a person you trust access to review your account activity, right? And in addition to that, explain why scammers prefer certain methods, right? A lot of them want to deal with cash. A lot of them want you to pay money up front. A lot of them want you to give them the 16 digit, 16 digits for your, for your card number. Or, hey, can we get your checking? Can we, do you have a checking account? Yes. Can we get your routing number and your account number? Right. Once you give that information out, can you confirm your zip code? Can you form at that point, then they'll be able to, do as much damage as possible. And, of course, provide referrals. Your bank can help you by providing referrals to a licensed broker or registered investment advisor. If somebody's reaching out to you with, about investments that are just too good to pass up, your bank, you can go into your bank and talk to about investment advisor. Maybe you can provide them with that information and say, hey, I've been approached to make an investment on this. Can you verify that this information is legitimate? But it's speaking to somebody who's in a position to be able to kind of, look at the information, assess it, and of course, give you, the right, the right advice on what the next steps are. With that being said, it is 6:44. And we have come to the end of this particular presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I will open it up to you ladies for any questions that you may have this evening. And I hope the information shared on scams and avoiding scams is going to be beneficial to you. And if you have, any examples of things that you want to share, we want to open this up to you. Knowledge is power. The more people that are aware of the potential threats that we can face out there and what we can do to kind of help and educate each other, the better we are to making sure we don't fall victim to people that are just trying to take advantage of us. And of course, take away our, take our hard-earned money away. So I'll open it up to you at this point. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to go through this presentation with you this evening.
Hi, this is Gwen. I had put a question in the chat. So my question is, when you allow by the way, excellent presentation, very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you. When you allow, say, a reputable IT company or tech company to remotely access your computer while you're online with them to access or repair whatever the computer issue is, once the session is closed, the link is closed that they had access to, will the tech be able to access, say, my computer again in the future without my knowledge?
No, they can't. I don't think it's very, because remote access normally, and also depends how they're doing it, right? Like what, I'm sure they'll be like, hey, go to a URL, type the URL in so we can gain access. I mean, I can just tell you that, like, I'll give an example for us at Citibank, like I've had to work with our IT department, and in most instances, they'll ask me to give, access to them. But while the work is going on, regardless of what they're doing, they'll even say to me like, hey, just go ahead and close the windows open and kind of follow through, especially if they're troubleshooting. But once the problem is resolved and you close out that link, they can't gain access unless you give them access, unless they basically remote into your system again. But, it's not like there's just an open window and now all of a sudden they can kind of come in and pry in. But then again, that's dealing with a reputable company, right?
Right.
Yeah, if you're dealing with somebody that's not, then, that could be a red flag.
Be aware, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think Rosalind's got her hand up. I have no visibility to anything in chat. So if you have any questions, please come off mute. And
yeah, the one thing I wanted to mention is being careful that once a lot of these apps that we sign up for, there's some background noise, so forgive me for that. But a lot of the apps we sign up for will ask you for access to your contacts, access to your camera, access to your microphone. When many times, like, why would you even need that? So we have to be careful to say no to that. And then one of the things that I do is, I give away from my little nonprofit is screen protector, camera protector shields that you can open and close your camera, because once you have given someone access, they can access your camera at any time. and then look and see, you know, all of your surroundings from your laptop or your desktop or whatever.
Mhm.
Camera is open, so you have to be very careful about that. And that's one of the real issues they were saying about, even about TikTok. You're giving them access to all of your stuff in your computer.
Yes, that's such a great example that you shared. Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of times and I'll just say this, you know, just be even like, I can just tell you, like, from my personal experience, and it's something you know, I've also shared with like family, and I was like, be careful of the QR codes you scan. Like, QR codes are also, I'm sure you guys will see, it almost seems like, hey, easy access, scan the QR code. You know, sometimes you don't know what path you're taking yourself down. And in addition to that, you know, if you do, you know, if you are working off a laptop or you're working off an all-in-one or everything else, yeah, you know, doing, you know, most laptops now will kind of have the camera shutter. So if the laptop's not in use, the camera's, you know, kind of, you know, turned off. In addition to that, it's a manual switch. It's a manual switch, so you've got to you know, you've got to open and close the shutter. But very, very good example given. Like, be careful of some of these apps, and a lot of them will ask you for access. In addition to that, like as mentioned, you know, there's a lot of sites that people don't realize that they've given permissions to, and it's just going into your devices and making sure that you've customized your security settings to where you have complete control of what's going on. And yep, I mean, it's the same thing with, you know, when you think about in-home cameras and, you know, all these security cameras, people will look for various ways, any open door they can get to gain access into what is essentially, you know, your personal space. They'll do what they can to manipulate it. And then of course they'll just build a scam based on the information that they, you know, that they've been able to collect. So thank you very much for sharing that. Very, very good point.
Okay, so do we have any more questions? I don't see any more questions in the chat. If we don't have any more questions, then I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And we have one more session that we will be wrapping up. And what is that topic going to be?
That topic is actually going to be buying, let me look it up real quick. Buying a home, I guess, preparing to buy a home. So that's definitely going to be a lot of good information to share for those first-time home buyers, or for people that are kind of looking to expand, you know, the portfolio in the real estate side.
Yes.
Very, very good. Looking forward to it. That's going to be our final session. It's definitely been a great experience for the last 5 of the 6 weeks. So we're looking forward to next week. So hopefully we'll get as many people on for next week, and, you know, close out the presentations with, you know, with the collective of information that was provided.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kimberly. This is Rashi. I just wanted, sorry, I was able to join today. Yeah, I think, you know, Jermaine has set an excellent foundation with all the topics. I think, you know, it will culminate in that home buying, you know, what is the finance and financial management that's involved. You know, I think, you know, it will delve into that. I think it will be a great topic next Wednesday. So thank you, and we appreciate Jermaine and Kimberly and all the audience here today. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you all, and we will see you next week. And just a reminder, I will be sending you an email at the later on this week to get your information so we can invite you to our closeout celebration. And have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay.